walking through a forest that I have called Magdalene. This place feels sacred to me. It's a cathedral or a church. And I discovered the Gospel of Mary Magdalene a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago. And I was brought up a born-again Christian. And so my access to the divine was through Christianity, my first introduction to the divine. And then I turned my back on it. And when I sort of realised that I felt like I had a CCTV God that was judging me, and for a while was atheist, and then came back to spirituality when I realised that I missed having something to say thank you to, and something bigger than me that kind of lifted me up. And then realised, well, I have every right to just worship the earth. And when I'd looked into it when I was an atheist, I was like, oh, maybe I'm a pagan. And I looked into it and sort of discovered that it was all very relatively recently made up. And that didn't work for me in the place I was in, sort of in this kind of logical, scientific space, headspace. It was like, well, you know, I can see that this is all made up, like by so-and-so Gardner and, you know, Crowley and people had all kind of made up these theories and ideas. And I was just like, actually, yeah, it's not my bag. And then came back to it and was like, well, I do worship the earth. That is what I worship. And it doesn't matter that everything got made up at some point. And this is my, you know, this is the thing I worship. I worship this. I worship this stunning, beautiful forest. It's a rainforest. And everyone says that as soon as you step into here, you relax. And it's because the trees are in communication with each other here. And so the chemicals are being released because there's a mycelium network. And I mean, this just is my cathedral. It's so sacred, it's so beautiful, and it has an immediate effect on me being in here. I called her Magdalena because having refound my faith and then having extremely powerful experiences on ayahuasca and generally through fooling theatre, which I'll introduce you to momentarily, and circle plays, which we do in fooling, and then also through doing geomancy and working with the land, connecting to earth energies. I mean, I'm forever opening up and things are being revealed to me. And one of the things that I discovered when I read Mary Magdalene Revealed was that the first few pages of her gospel are missing. And it's the first, so I think it was the first 7 pages of her gospel are missing. And that's ironic because she has 7 stages to development. So 7 stages to revelation and like this inner journey. And the Fool, there are 7 stages to the Fool. And I'm ruled by Saturn. I'm Capricorn. And Saturn returns to the birth chart every 28 years. And those who are ruled by Saturn especially notice the 7-year chapters. So each quarter of that cycle. And my life literally breaks down into 7-year chapters. And I actually have been writing a book every 7 years since I was 28. Capturing those cycles, those different chapters. So this was Mary Magdalene, my cathedral, Magdalena. And I use this walk as a spiritual journey. I go down to the sea and I bathe in the sea, and it feels like bathing in natural water is also kind of part of worshipping her, being in she, which is Mother Earth, connecting to this beautiful, beautiful planet, Gaia, and knowing that the goddess is in me. And that was an experience I had on the ayahuasca where my body atomized and I turned into a queen bee, and I was just pulsating and orgasming for hours, which was rather enjoyable. And reproducing, and I could just feel the goddess in me. I was the goddess, and that has never left me. And now I see how we are all facets of this inner divine jewel, and that divine jewel has the masculine and feminine, and that betwixt the two. So yeah, that's never left me. And it was as a profound experience as it was when I had a born again experience as a Christian when I was 11, and experienced what it would feel like to be nailed up to a cross. I saw myself being pulled up in the air on this cross, and looking down at all these people that I loved and was doing this for, and them looking back at me with hatred, and just that feeling of like what that experience would be like. And then I felt like a tap of water started pouring through my head, and just my body was full of mud, and this water just poured through my body. And it was a very profound experience that got me through school. And when I felt bullied, I got pretty badly bullied at school, and like other experiences that weren't pleasant, I just knew that I was okay, like that I had this fortification, this support, this love, this ally within me. But the thing that I then turned my back on was, it felt like the translation of that in Christianity was that thing was exterior to me and I was beholden to it. Whereas what I've gleaned from my knowledge of Mary Magdalene and my experience of the divine feminine and the divine, it's feminine and masculine, the divine, is that it's within. And there's a beautiful line in Mary Magdalene is Revealed, which I don't know if it comes from the author or whether it's from the gospel, but it says, every time you reach a hand out, a hand reaches out to pull you back in. And I love that. We have everything within us. And it's just a journey. The totem animal of my life is the snail. It's to enjoy the ride. I've always got a bag on my back. I'm always off somewhere. And just enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride. Because there is no finish line. Well, there is. There's death. So you don't want to get there too quick. Enjoy the journey. The ultimate race is life. There are 7 stages to the fall, and that begins with us being in the audience, where we're just normal, everyday people. Then we move to the stage, and that leap from getting from the audience onto the stage is the most terrifying leap. It's like, because if you're going from the audience to the stage, you're going with nothing prepared. So the most foolish thing anyone could ever do is leap into the unknown and jump onto that stage. And then once you're on the stage, you turn around and you face the audience and you begin to speak. Then 3 is, as you're speaking, a play begins to form and you step back into the play. And then 5 is when you feel a touch paper. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is when you sort of feel a touch paper where you feel sort of bounced into the archetypal realm. It's when you feel like you've touched on something archetypal. Then 5 is when you come back into the play from the archetypal realm. 6 is when you come back into talking to the audience, having been on this whole journey. And 7 is when you get back into the audience. But you've been on this whole spiritual journey. And so people years later will see you having watched you in a play or in a performance and be like, oh, I saw you do that thing. You'll never go back to being a 1 for those people who saw you. You will always be a 7. So there's something interesting about that and the correlation between Mary Magdalene and the fact that the first 6 pages of the gospel were missing. So her gospel starts on page 7. And she looks at and talks about the 7 trials or the 7 summits, the 7 things we have to overcome in our life. And she's described in the Bible as having had the 7 demons expelled from her, which are relatable to the 7 deadly sins, and that was used against her as a way of saying, well, then she was a really sinful person. But the other way of looking at it is she was an enlightened being and she had overcome the 7 summits that all of us should or would overcome if we were to find ourselves enlightened. So it actually describes an enlightened being rather than someone who was evil. It's someone who has done the work. And this has led me on to a way of working that I would like to explore with you. I'm also going to do some fooling, and I'm going to channel a bit of Mary Magdalene. The thing that's great about the Fool is there's no sacred, like, oh no, you can't possibly do that. I mean, yes, you can. So I'll channel her. I've got nothing planned. I don't know what will come out. We'll just see what happens. What I would like to suggest for us to do as an exploration, something for you to do at home, is to draw a rose with hearts with 7 petals, and taking some time to meditate, to sit and consider what are like your 7 blocks. What are 7 things that are, and these can change over time. This is an exercise you could keep coming back to. It doesn't have to be defining, but it might be that, you know, reflecting on the 7 deadly sins of sloth and envy and greed, like where do they show up in your life, and to kind of name them, and to write those down on these 7 petals. So these are your 7 obstacles. I'll write this on here. 7 obstacles. So one of mine is hedonism. Ambition. Oversharing or overcompensating. Over the top. I'm going to put over the top because it shows up in lots of ways. Over the top. I'm easily, so not present, not being present. Comparison. Like food greedy. I really like food. And impatient. Okay, so impatient. And what's gluttonous. Okay, so those are 7 things that come up for me lots of times. They're kind of things that jump out for me. And then working with the power of Mary Magdalene, the reason why I've asked you to bring a rose, preferably a red rose. I mean, this is pretty red, but it would be really nice if it was one of those gorgeous, really deep reds. We're going to work with this rose for supporting us in developing. So what I will do is I'll pluck 7 petals from the rose, and I'll write on them sort of words of inspiration or support that will come from Mary Magdalene, and we'll let those dry, and then with the next full moon burn them and send them up to the heavens to support you with overcoming these obstacles. So this is the magic that we're going to cast. But in order to do that, I'm going to first of all channel some of Mary Magdalene. I'm going to do it first of all by, so today working with the power and magic of Mary Magdalene, do a reading and see what she has to say to us. Now, in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, there are 4 pages missing in the middle. And the question that she's asking Christ at the moment of these pages being ripped out is, when a person has a divine vision, do they see with their soul or with their spirit? And Jesus says he does not see with his soul or his spirit. He sees with his mind. But the word that's used for mind in ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian doesn't translate to English very well, but it kind of means like your like your deepest perception. Like in Fooling, we call it our silent twin. So we say we have our inner world and our outer world, and that sphincter in the middle is our ego. And when we're fooling, we try to unravel that and flip our inner world into our outer world. And I believe that the reason why the world is fucked is because we separated the inner world and said that that was nothing, that the dream and spirituality and creativity and imagination are irrelevant, and all we cared about was the outer. And that is an immoral and awful hellhole, which is what we've created. Like, you know, we've taken the spirit and soul out of this outer world, and by doing that we've disregarded caring about it, and have done things in a very immoral way. So part of what I think the healing that's needed in us and in the world is to bring that inner world back, and for everything we do to be an act of worship and everything we do to be sacred. And that's the work that I do. That's what I'm about, is trying to flip that circle into our lives all the time, so that everything we do is sacred and magic and inner work and outer work at the same time. And that's what Fooling is so good at, and that's why the Fool is the 0 at the top of the tarot deck, because it's the known and the unknown. The Magus is the known, and the unknown is the Fool, and the Fool is happy and in love with everything, including the inner world. And it's because that work's been done on the 7 demons, and there's the 7 stages of the Fool to support you with playing in that space, and we've managed to like ease the ego sphincter enough to open it up. So going to work with Mary Magdalene energy to pull these runes and just see what she has to say to us at this point in time in history, in the world, and with everything that's going on. So we have the spear, Teraz, which is about being direct. So this is about being absolutely direct. Physically, in the physical world, she is shining a torch into the darkness and is illuminating spaces that are not seen to us at the moment. This is physically in the outer world. In our communication, this is what I was just saying, it's both above and below. It's the inner and outer. It's the yew tree. It's the tree of life, Yggdrasil. So this is saying, in terms of our communication, we need to start talking about both spaces, the inner and the outer. Emotionally, or in terms of our passion, this is Ing, which is the sperm. It's the seed of inspiration. It's masculine, fertile energy. So this means that we need to have the drive to penetrate through the bubble that is the nonsense that the world that we live in now. So how do we penetrate through that and make something new, transform, make something that wasn't there before? And then spiritually, this is going to bring us joy, and to have joy in it, because there's a real carrot and rod, thing when it comes to climate crisis and everything that's happening in the world. And it's all very rod heavy. But actually, the more you fall in love with life, the more you fall in love with your inner world, the more you allow your inner world to spill out, and the more you allow spirituality and outer worlds to become one, the more joyful you are. I mean, the Fool is full of joy. It's a joyful, joyous thing to do. And so to merge these worlds and bring all that juicy, yummy magic into the world is just a joyous, wonderful thing. I always pull 3 tarot cards as well. This gives us a little more insight. So, Mary Magdalene speaking to us about the world and her advice or guidance. So we have the Devil. So this is the past, and this is the master of the material realm. So this is what has been happening. We have this very cock-heavy, I mean, it looks like a penis, very cock-heavy patriarchy that has mastered the physical world. Well done. Mastered the physical world. then we have the high priestess, because she is rising and the goddess is rising again, the divine feminine. And we need this. We need the divine feminine to give women the strength to help steer the wheel away from this iceberg that, you know, we're heading towards. It needs to be all hands on deck, but it means that those who are currently steering the wheel need to relinquish some power and let everyone join in with helping to move in a completely different direction. And it means we need to let in the cyclical, because what we're doing is linear, and that is destroying us because we're not considering where things come from or where they go. So we need to be cyclical, but if you find a balance between the two, then you get a spiral. And if we do this and we work together, then it's going to just bring us pleasure. And this is like the joy. There is no reason for our lives to not be beautiful and wonderful, celebratory, creative, pleasurable acts of magic. I'm going to do 2 more cards. This is like a little nudge in a direction. So this is using our wisdom. Using the wisdom. We know so much, and it's time for all of it to join forces. There's a saying which I find very important in my life. Well, first of all, the question mark is my crucifix. But secondly, that science without spirituality is immoral, and spirituality without science is wah-wah. So we need a bit of both, right? You need to be practical. You need to know, you need to trust science. You can't just be spiritual and be like, I don't believe anything that a scientist says. But also science needs to have a moral compass. Otherwise, we're inventing atom bombs and, you know, destroying the planet. So we need to work together, and they do actually join. You know, I've always felt that it's like science, science explains how a car works, and religion explains who made the car and why. So I don't think that they're separate things. I've never understood why it's kind of one or the other. And I feel that Mary Magdalene was someone who was very wise and knowledgeable, and, you know, she anointed Jesus. Like, she knew how to do things. She was full of ancient wisdom from the, you know, pagan, heathen faith, and then was totally up with the new ideas and was there at the cutting edge of this new way of thinking that was coming from the teachings of Christ. And I think that's how we all have to be. We need to be steeped in indigenous and sacred knowledge, and also be right at the forefront of what's happening and what's new, and to be open to it, because otherwise you're becoming a conservative yourself. You know, we need to stay open and liberal with our imagination. Transform. Now, that is a Mary Magdalene card, is it not? So it's time to transform. It's time for the phoenix to rise from the ashes. We need to change the way that we live our lives, and we need to transform our reality. And that's no small thing, but also is completely doable, and doesn't have to be Armageddon. It can be an act of pleasure. So I'm going to explore Mary Magdalene. So I don't know as much about her as I'm sure many of you do, and my connection to her has been a beautiful journey, and I can feel the sense of something tantalizing, but I just have to trust that the journey that I'm on is only just begun. And so from that place, my gospel is just a simple one. Know that inside you is all the answers. You are born from the infinite. You go back to the infinite. And every second you walk this earth, you are still infinite. You're having a mortal experience. There are challenges that are set, and we all have them. That's what this life is for. 7 summits are placed before us. And in this life, perhaps you will manage to ascend all 7 and find heaven, which is in here. It doesn't have to be this lifetime. There are many lifetimes. But one day you will find this place and you will feel the connection and the joy and the pleasure of the infinite from which you have come, which is God, which is here, which is here. Every time you reach a hand out and beg for help, there will always be a hand reaching out to you and pulling you back in. We are all one. So work on your journey. Do not rush it. This is an absolute treat for you to be here. No matter how difficult, no matter how hard the struggles, trust that they are nothing more than what you can cope with. The universe is only ever sending you what you are capable of dealing with. Trust it. Trust yourself. Keep falling back into the hands of the universe and let it lead. The more you fight the flow, the more difficult it will be. You have chosen to be here. And life is so short. So enjoy and relish every second. Follow that red cord and it will lead you back to yourself, which is the infinite and the sacred heart. Travel well. Good pilgrim. So working with these 7 obstacles, we'll now think about 7 blessings that I wish to give to myself. Reflecting on what we have channeled from Mary Magdalene today. Pleasure. Discipline. Trust. Joy. Patience. Kindness. And most importantly, love. So I have placed these 7 blessings over my 7 obstacles on my flower, and I will leave these on my altar if you have a special place where you can put them, and you know, any crystals or anything that you can place with them to help raise the vibrations and strengthen it. I'll place the rest of my rose with it. And when it comes to the full moon, I'm going to take these petals and I'm going to burn them and send them up to the universe and ask for their support with helping me on my journey. But yeah, think of the snail enjoying the ride. Everywhere it goes is home. It's happy wherever it be. So trust the journey. Don't rush. Let it unravel and relish every second of it. But absolutely pour this outer world full of your inner world. Fill it with imagination. Channel your archetypes and just allow the magic to flow. Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there with you on this beautiful day, but I'm celebrating someone's love at a wedding. But hopefully I shall see you next year. Blessings.